back to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. Today, Renee Biery joins me. She is the owner of deVignier Design, and she is also the host of the podcast called The Only Girl on the Jobsite. I just love that title. I think it's so clever, right? Renee's firm specializes in restoration, new construction, and she does do full service, okay? She caught my attention when she said in her email to me that renovation management is a stable income for interior designers throughout the year. And then she personally finds the furniture procurement and design side can ebb and flow depending on the job. And I'm thinking that's pretty opposite what most of you have told me. So right there, that's a great place to start for an interesting conversation. And the thing is, this is Renee's expertise and her experience. So I'm really interested to see how she approaches this. Now, before we get going, I want to remind you that this podcast is sponsored by My Doma Studio. If you have yet to check out My Doma Studio 2.0, you need to do it. In the past, maybe you've thought, oh, I wish they had this, or I wish this feature was there. It's probably there now because Sarah Danielli and her team have been working literally day and night for about the last year to truly upgrade and improve the user experience that you have when you come to My Doma Studio. So I'm encouraging you to go to mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business. And if you are a current member and you haven't been utilizing it, or you have looked into it in the past and thought, I'm not sure it's for me, or it's the first time you're hearing about it, now is the best time to go look into it. mydomastudio.com/a well-designed business. Okay, let's meet Renee. Hey, Renee, thanks so much for joining me on A Well-Designed Business.
Hey, Luann, thanks for having me on.
Well, I'm delighted to have this conversation with you because, we have not had too many of your colleagues on the show that their business model is the renovation management. Now, we've had designers on the show that do it. I know we've had Elizabeth Scruggs from Superiors in Construction. She does it. It's not that there haven't been people, but I don't know that we focused on it on a show so much, right? And so I thought it was interesting that, in your email pitch to me, that you said renovation management is a stable income for interior designers throughout the year as procurement and decorating ebbs and flows per job. Now, here's the thing. I'm not so sure that too many designers would necessarily say renovation management feels stable. I just feel like it feels like there's even way more moving parts. When you're part of an interior design project, right? You're part of that team, but to be the one that is, masterminding and overseeing it is another animal. But this is your expertise, and this is where you've concentrated your career, and you're going to explain to us some of the best practices in it, but also why you're a proponent of your colleagues, sharpening these skills and leaning into it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So tell us, get us started on, maybe you should define for us what the scope of renovation management is in your business, so we have an understanding of the things that you've got your hand on top of, throughout the whole project.
Sure. And that is a good distinction to make because I am not talking about becoming a general contractor. There are rules and licensing that changes state by state. What I'm talking about is renovation management, essentially is project management. And that is what interior designers do on the decorating side. They project manage, but it's just different things they're managing. So while it seems unnerving because there's the fear of the unknown, what I think designers need to take a deep breath and say, this is actually what I do best. I just have this different set of skill sets that I certainly can apply to a renovation project. And so right now, I will take on a bathroom renovation or a kitchen renovation, or I'll be a part of an entire ground up home construction project. And it really does vary, but the skill sets are the same. And so while you may not know, while you may not have talked to a lot of interior designers who are managing renovation projects, they are actually doing it because they'll tell me, oh, well, I did my own bathroom, or I did my mother's bathroom, or I did my sister's kitchen. That's the same thing. They just aren't either marketing those skills, and that could be due to lack of confidence or realizing that that is a part of a skill that they can offer to their client base, which is a really critical piece to becoming what I call a one-stop shop. Because I know designers who have been a part of projects with clients where they're decorating the entire home, and then the client hires a kitchen designer to take on their kitchen. Well, the awkward thing comes in because there's a known relationship between the designer and the client because they've been decorating for, who knows, a year or more. And then so obviously the client's going to lean on that designer and say, hey, what do you think of this? And what do you think of that option? Well, now you've got this really awkward moment because they've hired a kitchen designer and yet they're still consulting with you. And where does that billing come in? And, you don't want to overstep someone else's territory. It just gets awkward. Well, then manage the kitchen project yourself. And then all of a sudden your client says, wow, this is fantastic. We're going to start in the living room. We're going to buy all new furniture. And then you know what? Let's do that bathroom renovation. And I find more clients are inclined to move into a renovation project if they know I can help them with it.
So let me pick a couple of things apart and go back for a second before you keep going. So I think what I heard in there was the aha moment of I know for a fact that many of the designers that I've spoken to on the show are doing what you said, overseeing kitchen management, renovation management, bathroom management, and even full house, right? But we haven't often talked about it as the topic of the show. And then what's interesting is when you then further, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, well, yeah, of course, many of them that I've talked to actually do it. And then when you said further, when you were describing how here you are, you're doing the design and the decor, and then your client's like, okay, now it's time to hire somebody. I need the kitchen renovated. So I go and hire somebody else. And you're standing there like, wait, what about me? But that is it. It's like, if you're not, like you said, leading with it and explaining it and talking about it in your messaging, in your marketing, and in just your conversations with confidence, someone who has worked with you for maybe, 6 months or 6 years on design and decor, when they think they want the kitchen remodeled, they don't think of you because you haven't been talking about it in a confident way that this is part of what my scope is. Is that what that's what I heard. Is that what you were talking about?
100%.
Yeah,
And
right?
I have done that in the past myself. We still joke about it. I had a client that we decorated for years, and he then maybe 3 years passed and we weren't doing any current projects. And he ran into him one day and he said, hey, we're putting on this large addition that we've always talked about. And I said, hey, I'd love to look at the plans. And he's like, yeah, we'll let you know when we need furniture. And I thought,
Whoops.
okay, where have I gone wrong?
Right.
And I said, no, you don't understand. And I'll tell you what, it took me 3 or 4 times to get through to him. And he will be the first to tell you, by the time he did relinquish the drawings and the contracts and everything, and I poured over it, I found issues, glaring issues that he did not understand yet had signed off on. And he's a surgeon. I wouldn't, exactly say he doesn't know what he's doing when he's reading a contract, but
Right.
he he doesn't know what he's doing when he's reading a contract about home renovation and construction because it's not in his skill set.
Right.
And he has told everyone who will listen. He's actually become a marketing agent for me. Is you got to get Renee in early. You got to let her look at the details. And that's really the goal, because that trust factor is there. Then he knew that, I can look at something that he's been poring over for 6 months. I can look at it in an hour or so and say, hey, I'm seeing this is going to be an issue down the road, and I'm going to tell you why. And then it's up to him to say, nope, I see no issue in it.
Right.
Fantastic.
Well, what I
It's
love
your
about
home,
that,
you live in it.
yeah, what I love about that is, I don't know, Renee, if you remember the show with John and Teresa Dorlino from Circle Design, and he's an architect and she's an interior designer, and he basically said what your experience was with this particular client. He's like, look, I'm going to make the plans. I'm going to do all the things, and it's going to fit right, and it's going to be able to be built, and it's going to be square, and it's going to look symmetrical. He said, but Teresa's going to come in and say, right, but John, you've got the family room looking right into the powder bathroom toilet. Like, what are you doing here, buddy? You know what I mean? Or I can't fit window treatments in this family room because you didn't give me enough wall space. And here he's saying just what you're saying. It's like, that this client of yours went out, got all the quote unquote technical professionals, but you as the interior designer have the technical expertise, but also that vision for actually the way a client is going to use the space. And that's the superpower, right?
That's the superpower.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, it is funny that a husband and wife, typically they don't often get along that well. But the best way I describe an architect versus an interior designer, because I am asked that a lot since I'm on projects. And an architect views from the outside in, an interior designer views from the inside out. And it really is that simple. And like your example was perfect. I will look at a drawing and I'll say, why aren't there outlets flanking the bed?
Right.
Well, how do you know what wall the bed's going to go on, Renee? Oh, well, it's obvious. The bed's going to go right here. And the architects look at me going, how'd she know that?
Right.
Well, because decades of experience has told me, and logic, that the bed's going right there. Therefore, we need outlets for, whatever they're going to plug in at night, and USB ports and everything else.
Yeah.
Whereas the architect typically, even the really good architects, typically will just do things by code. I don't blame them because they don't know. They don't go to that secondary level of how are you going to live in this space? Who's living in this space with you? And when are you going to use this space? Are you only going to come into the den at night? Well, that's going to inform some decisions than if you're going to be in the bedroom only in the morning. It really does come to those nuances, and that's what elevates a project from traditional design to a custom design for those specific clients at that point in their time, because that can also change. I mean, I have clients I work with for more than a decade. And what we did in the beginning, we're not doing that now. Their lives have changed. Their children are, they're empty nesters or they're getting grandchildren. I have a client, I literally saw her kids go from middle school to college, and she now has a grandchild with another on the way. We're doing totally different things based on those needs that she has now. And I love architects. I really do. I obviously work with them all the time, but we are different beasts. It's totally different skill sets. And the really evolved architects appreciate that. And I say that with love, because architects tend to not view our industry as professionally as they should. And so that's another point where the more confident a designer is to lead conversations in a direction that makes everyone shine, right? There's no point in saying, well, he screwed up. He didn't put outlets there. He had no idea the bed was going to go there. Well, nobody wins, right? But a designer has people skills that, quite frankly, I've never really seen a lot of architects have.
Right.
And so there's a nuanced way to get your point across, to get with the project where it needs to be, and elevate the entire team, and hopefully educate the architect a little along the way.
So let me ask you a question. So showing up and being a respectful partner is kind of what you're describing, having some confidence to, respectfully say, hey, great idea, but blah, blah, blah. That's step 2. step one is the hurdle that you had with your client, which is when you had your aha that here you have a client that values you, respects you, trusts you, but didn't consider that you should be brought in until the furniture time. So what did you learn in hindsight, and what did you do, and what did you learn in hindsight about when you went into your next projects? Like, how did you make that shift so that as you were working with all future clients, you started to let them know, don't, think of me just in this lane, understand all the lanes?
I basically just started talking more about all of my projects for the entire scope. And people were stunned. And some people even sort of dismissed the conversation, like, oh, okay, sure, you helped with the bathroom. And I'm, picturing in their head, they thought I was at the tile store and helped pick out the tiles. And that is basically an uphill battle that designers will continually have to face until more of us are doing it. And it's an expected quality in any firm. And I think that's okay, right? It allows to educate, the public to the direction you want, right? So they'll say, Renee, what do you do? Like, I don't understand. Well, you're not a plumber. Well, no, but a house gets electricity in it, and a plumber's on the project, and the plumber's not doing the electricity. So there's a lot of different people with different skill sets that are incredibly needed to get this project to the end result, but they don't have overlapping skills. Well, a designer can add to that and elevate any project.
What I love about it is that we do have to understand that clients don't necessarily get it. Like, they don't. It's so funny because my one daughter has been renovating. She bought a house last summer, and they have been renovating the house from day one. And, we have a lot of people that we're connected with in the industry, like really great GCs that, Vinny coached, when they were in high school, baseball and softball. I mean, all the things, right? And so it's like, both of my girls are like, Dad, I need a plumber. You got a guy? I got a guy. I need a roofer. You got a guy? I got a guy. Like, Vinny's got a guy for everything, right? And so the thing is, I said to her, and this is the daughter that never worked in the podcast. So she, where the daughter that worked in the podcast would probably have been like, oh my God, it would be great to have a designer doing this big, huge renovation. The other daughter has watched me and Vinny wing it for all of our years, doing all of our construction projects, and doesn't have the relationship with the industry that we all have, right? And so anyway, so the end of the story is that, we have a great contractor. She hired him. And I said to her, would you want some references for a designer to kind of, be overseeing the project pools? She's like, oh no, I mean, we're only going to this and that and the other thing. Well, let me tell you what, it was like, we're only going to have an ice cream sundae, and now we're making our own milk, dairy, everything else, and everything's organic, and we're building everything, and eventually it becomes an ice cream sundae. I mean, what they ended up doing to this house is beyond comprehension. It's going to be remarkable, but it's now a year, and they are out of their mind. They are out of patience, and they're kind of putting it at the foot of the GC, like, nobody's been on the job for 10 days and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, the supply chain. She's like, Lou, the stuff's sitting in my garage, blah, blah, blah. But I just know inside that if she had a designer coordinating and overseeing and being the liaison, I, in my heart, from everything I've learned from 6 years of podcasting, believe that, forget if it would have turned out more beautiful. That's to be seen. It's just getting finishes now, irrelevant, right? But I do believe it would have been a smoother process for her. It's too late. The bell has been rung. They're almost at the finish line, right? But my point in that story is, you just don't know if you don't know. If you've grown up in a family like ours where Vinny's got a guy for everything, and, Lou and Vinny are kind of in the industry, and we can kind of, see our way through this, but we've never tackled something of that level alone, you sort of think you can do this stuff. And it's up to you to educate your clients as you're, maybe doing their primary bedroom and they're thinking about the kitchen, of all of the things that go into it, right? So that they do understand that help is better. Assistance is better than winging it, right?
Absolutely. And actually, an existing client that you're decorating with is an easier, I don't want to say target, but an easier person to educate because you already know that person. You know if the woman works, you know if they've got two small children, that you know enough about their life to say, hey, listen, let me tell you what you're going to have to commit to in order to pull off a smooth renovation project.
Yeah.
And then you just proceed to list it and watch their mind get blown.
Mm.
And it's those that you don't know. Like I will say, like I just said, I talk about what I do all the time, but I've decided recently, or pre-pandemic, when we used to have cocktail parties and things, I stopped talking about it because the minute I said what I would do, they'd say, let me tell you, I hate
Yeah.
contractors. And then the next hour, they're just unloading this
Right.
horrible project they had. And the guy ripped them off, and then this, and then that. And inevitably, can't help it anymore. I am literally picking the story apart going, well, that's where you went wrong. Oh,
Yeah.
yep, you missed that moment. And no, he didn't screw you over. You let yourself open. You didn't make a decision.
Right.
You missed a deadline there. And,
Yeah.
And that's what I end up doing at these, my
Yeah.
friends' houses where I'm supposed to be relaxing.
Right.
So yes, does it cost money to hire me to manage a project? Of course it does.
Mm-hmm.
Like it costs money to hire a contractor to sling a hammer.
Right.
It costs money to hire your firm to put all the window treatments and shutters up, right? I mean, of course, a service costs money, but what does that money provide?
Right.
That money provides a level of professionalism which will eliminate your daughter's freaking out in the middle of the night, waking up, in a night sweat because they're head over their ass in their budget and they don't know how they got there. Or do they not trust the contractor anymore? What was he saying? All of that. I tell my clients they shouldn't know. Like you said, you shouldn't know what you don't know.
Right.
I'm not a lawyer. When I need legal advice, I seek out a lawyer. Now, do I understand some legal jargon? Sure. But again, I am not a lawyer. So I have clients and they don't think they mean it this way, but they're like, it's a home. We all live in them. How hard can it be?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I
Call
have
me
to
in a
say,
month,
Yes, no, it's so true. And I have to say, hers is, I mean, I'm really proud of her. She's done a really great job, and it's mostly smooth going. So I can't even say that this is a horror story. And that's also because of the long time connection with the contractor that
Yes.
she hired. But I do think it's the anomaly, right? That at the end of the process, you still like the contractor, you still want them to come to your house when you don't have that middle professional person of the designer to manage the relationship and the expectations. So the thing is, we have to talk about how to position yourself as the one-stop shop for clients who want to renovate and decorate. And you said in there, and I like it because I use it all the time in my own sales, whether it's sales at Luann Igara Inc. or it's sales at Window Works, is organically bringing into the conversation types of things that I've done for other people and clients that relate, right? So you're in there, somebody does call you to renovate, say, their bedroom suites. And while you're talking, you just, casually say, oh my goodness, I love this color. We used this on another project, and that project was outstanding because we also renovated the entire kitchen, oversaw all of that, blah, blah, blah. But this color works out amazing. Like there's always a way to just keep sprinkling in the upper level deliverables that you have so that clients who may, be contemplating upper level deliverables go, oh, wait, I could ask you for that. So that's one tactic. Do you have other ways that you can educate, our colleagues here on how to position yourself to be that one-stop shop?
Sure. Well, and sort of in that same vein, more often than not, if I am being brought in to look at a master bedroom, along the way from the front door to that master bedroom, clients always feel the need to apologize, right?
Yeah,
They're like,
yeah,
oh
yeah,
my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah.
I got a designer in house. So they'll say something like, oh, don't look at the bathroom. That's on the back burner, maybe in another year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's your entree.
Yeah.
Okay. Go after that bathroom. Really, what are you thinking of doing? Let's take a moment. Let's take a quick just take a quick step in there, so that you're prepared in a year or two. You might even give them some ideas. Hey, start going to a tile store. Look on Pinterest. Start pinning things you like. That gets the conversation going. You're not you're not selling yourself, really. You're educating them. Hey, what is it about this bathroom that isn't working for you? And if, trust me, they'll give you 17 points of what doesn't work. Well, then pick one or two off and give them a solution. Right. And you're not billing them for it. Just say, okay, this isn't working. When you renovate it, I think you should go in this direction. And they're going to look at you and you say, I do this a lot. And, I've really enjoyed this aspect of my business. And they're going to go, oh, interesting. Wait, why are we here? And I'm like, yeah, we're here for your master bedroom. Let's go.
Right.
And so you just keep educating them along the way. And trust me, the clients will literally serve you those projects on a platter, because they do. I can't go in someone's house and they don't apologize for something.
Right.
And I'm like, you have no idea how little I look at unless you're paying me to be here. I'm just here to see you.
Right.
And entertained by friends.
Right.
But
I love that. So let me ask you something, Renee. I get the distinction, but I've been selling for 40 years. For a designer out there who is thinking, right, but if I stop us on the way at the powder bath and I start to ask her 2 or 3 questions, next thing you know, I'm going to be 45 minutes giving free advice for the powder bath. I know that's what somebody out there is thinking, $10. Now, we have to lead the conversation. We have to be in charge of it. But maybe you tell us how I'm sure you've been in situations where you've done it strategically because you want them to know, blah, blah, blah. But what's getting back to what you called me for. How do you think about that transition? Because that's the missing part, where a less seasoned sales professional, which is, by the way, all of you are sales professionals, gets stuck for 45 minutes in a room that's not part of the project today.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. I mean, people will ask me what I do for a living, and while I'll tell them I'm a interior designer, I'm in the sales business, right? And I'm a service provider. I just trade different things, right? So yes, there are going to be people, and of course there are going to be people who are intentionally taking advantage of that. And I'm not referring to them, because that's a different beast that you really tend to have to get a firmer line with. But if you are the one that brought the powder bath into the conversation, then you stay in charge of that, right? And you say, okay, great. You could say, hey, we're getting ahead of ourselves. You told me that was a 2-year project. We're here to talk about your master bedroom, how we can make it whatever fabulous dream you have. Let's get on to that project. And really just sort of ease them into what you were there intentionally to do. But just know, I bill hourly, and that's a whole nother discussion that we may or may not need to get into. But just know that if I spent 15 minutes talking about a future renovation project, that's marketing time. I don't view that as lost hours. I view that as a marketing, investment, quite frankly, because if that powder bath doesn't come to fruition for me, she might tell her friend Sally. And Sally's going, wait, what? I didn't know Renee could do that. Oh,
right.
Well, maybe I'm going to call her and talk to her about my powder bath. You just never know. And that, trust me, is the frustrating part, right? You can't really gauge where your marketing dollars are best spent, because it's mostly word of mouth. And it's a very hard line to trace. I've tried. People think you're just being gossipy. Like, where'd you hear about me? No, really, where did you hear about me?
Right. I need to know.
But, the other way that has really changed everything for me is social media. I mean, you can go on my social media page and you will see beautiful images of finished rooms. You will also see lots of open walls with studs and electrical outlets and things dangling. And I would hope someone that came on my page would say, I guess she does both, right? It's just a visual. I don't even have to necessarily write a lot of words, but it's obvious that I'm not just doing the finished product. Or I'll do a segment of, okay, this is what the wall looked like before. This is when we tore it all out. And this is where we all put it back together. And that's a fantastic way of illustrating, because we are visual people, and it illustrates the actual process that you did. Now, more often than not, clients want even further information. What is it that you did? But it starts the conversation. And that's really where, any designer wants to at least get the chance to have that conversation.
I love it.
And then ultimately, we are surrounded by people who need our services, right? We are surrounded by architects. We're surrounded by contractors. And one of my favorites are realtors. I mean, who sees the client first? The realtors.
Right.
And the realtors that are worth their weight have a list of their favorite plumber, their favorite electrician, their favorite lawn guy. Guess what? their favorite designer.
Mm-hmm.
And not just for decorating. And they're the ones you need to get in with and say, hey, listen, when your client buys a house and they hate the color of the hardwood floors, they want to redo one bathroom and paint everything. Well, a new designer, that's gold. That's
Right.
your education.
Right.
That's your experience. Now, will I take on a project that small? It depends. I have one or two realtors that I will almost do anything for.
Mm.
But that's where they're going to gain the experience. They're going to start to get to know the trades. They're going to start cutting their teeth on small enough projects that they can figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I think, actually, quite frankly, realtors are the easiest way in. Architects, like I mentioned before, I adore architects. I love what they do, but they are not necessarily the easiest gang to become a member of. Contractors, interestingly, I was just talking with a contractor the other day, and it's about 50-50 for me. I work with all the contractors in our area, and I bet 50% of them will refer me to clients, and the other 50% don't.
Mm.
Haven't quite figured out the why. They love working with me. It just isn't really what they're comfortable doing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
realtors really are the best way in. They have the first contact with clients. Their clients, more often than not, want to do something immediately to the
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
You're not building a 5-year, pipeline. They bought it in June. They need to be in by September, and boom, you're right there in July and August.
Right.
So that's the other thing with the realtor connection is it's usually flash in the pan, get it in, get it done, and get out.
Right. Right.
But I really, that's a good marketing tool.
I love it. I love it. Great advice. Now, you have a podcast called The Only Girl on the Job Site. I love the title. Very clever. And the final
Who
thing.
I am.
Yeah. And the final thing that I want to kind of, make sure that we pick apart here is, some of the, the best practices that you've learned to sort of, like flexing your muscle and having that confidence on the job site in a male dominated environment. And even for our male interior designers, it's not, I don't even think it is male dominated. There's no question, but there is a culture to the construction and the trades that is different than the culture from design. So even I could see male designers still probably with less difficulty than female designers, but there's still that, oh, you're the designer, out of my way, I'm doing the work. I mean, I've experienced that as a window treatment professional, and I was walking onto job sites since I'm 20 years old and basically looked like I was 12. So I get it, but you give us some of your best practices for handling yourself and for cultivating that confidence so that you can show up as the professional.
Absolutely. And the thing I say to anyone who will listen is I learn every day.
Yeah.
Hands down. I have been doing this for 29 years, from Manhattan to Delaware to overseas to all over the country. And every single day, every single project, I learn something. And you have to be willing to do that. I personally, I think that's why I love what I do, because there are no two projects alike, period. And if that's intimidating, then you need to sit with that, right? Because that is the case. You are never going to be on two projects the same. And also because things change. I mean, the plumbing that I watched get roughed in the 90s, well, that's evolved. And we're doing different types of fixtures and so are they still plumbing sinks? Yes, but they're doing it differently. And so my advice to all designers is to see yourself as an equal on this team. You are not above, you are definitely not below. But I see designers trip up with where they fit in this model. And where they fit is an equal. Now, I'm not saying that's going to be handed to them and they can just put it on, like a sport coat in the beginning and be like, woo, I'm an equal. It's not going to be that easy. It really isn't. And I still run into this if I'm on a brand new job with a brand new team. Mm-hmm. What you need to do is you need to show that you understand that you don't know everything. Simple. You also need to show interest and respect for those that know more than you, right? It goes back to, what were you taught in kindergarten, right? So I will, instead of standing over a plumber kind of with this look like, what the hell are you doing? I will actually bend down on my knees, look in and go, wait, I've never seen it done before. Tell me, what are you doing? This is the way I've always seen it, and tell me why this is different and why you do it this way, and blah, blah, blah. Engage with them,
Mm.
learn from them. That's how you're going to grow your knowledge. It's not from reading books and watching shows. It's from being on a project, listening to them complain about something. Why are you complaining? What did you anticipate when we opened the walls? Oh,
Mm.
well, Renee, I anticipated seeing X, Y, and Z. We opened the wall and crap. Here's a hot water line. I don't know where it goes to. Let's go
Mm.
find out. And guess what? I'll go with him. I find that fascinating. Let's go find out where is that hot water pipe coming from? Can we cut it off? Do we have to work around it? It's a team approach. And what you need to, or what designers need to do, is show and actually do help the trade person, whoever it may be, whether it's the architect, the plumber, the electrician, the flooring guy, how to communicate what they need to the client. And I jokingly say I translate for architects and plumbers and electricians, but that is really what I do, because I know what they're trying to accomplish, but they aren't as well versed with the clients as I
Mm.
am. Because what designers need to keep in mind is that designer has known the client at least weeks, likely months or more, than the plumber that walked in that morning. Right. So a designer has an established relationship. They
Mm.
know how to manage, right? Because designers do this all day long. They know if a woman, if their female client needs something straightforward and can talk, like you and I are talking, or a little more nuanced and a little more, hey, let me
Mm.
explain how this is going to work, and don't be worried, and da da da. You just know that about your client. The plumber doesn't know that. He
Mm.
doesn't know who this woman is. He just knows that she's the client and that she comes on the site periodically and she might be friendly and say hi, right?
Right. Right.
So that's the job. Designers need to sell to the other trades that, hey, I am on your side, and I can make your job easier. And who doesn't want their job to be easier?
Right.
So if a designer comes on the project and says, what are you doing over there? I don't understand that. That doesn't look like what's in the drawings. Who's winning? Nobody,
Right.
right? But if they see a problem, hey, what's going on? Oh, I was looking at these drawings this morning, and there's just so many ways that designers are well versed in people skills, right? Apply them to whomever you're speaking with.
Right.
But make sure. I see designers really trip themselves up by appearing superior in some way. And
Mm.
I hate to even say that, because this is an industry that I have dedicated my entire working life to. And it kills me, because I know that one designer is hurting the rest of us, right? Because they're feeding the stereotype that, the designer's only there to, one, ruin a budget, two, double the timeline, and three, make problems, right? How many
Oh my
times I've heard
God.
that in my life. And so the more a designer can say, what can I learn from them that I can apply to my next projects, right? If you need to feel you're gaining something, you are. You're gaining the knowledge from every tradesperson you come across. So ask them questions. My guys laugh at me all the time, because I'm always like, what are you doing? What's up today? And they're like, oh, for the love of God, Renee. Like, okay, let me tell you what we're doing today. But you know what? I pick up something on that project and I'll apply it 6 months later, three
Mm.
projects later. I'll say, you know what? I saw it done this way. Let's give it a shot. It
Right.
may not
Right.
work,
Right.
but it's constantly learning and constantly seeing yourself as an equal. And I'm not saying that that's an easy position to obtain. It really truly isn't. And there are times, and I have been a part of projects where the demeaning behavior from contractors has almost blown an entire project up. And
Mm.
it doesn't happen as much as people claim. In 29 years, it's happened twice to
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a position I want any designer to be in. But I also don't want designers to just get bulldozed over by some guy who's insecure about having a designer, whether it's a male or a female, on the project. But being diminished, being spoken down to, dismissed, all of that, whether it even jumps into the rude and inappropriate level, is not obviously anything a designer should put up with. But in my experience, and the reason I'm still doing what I do, is I don't see that very often. I just wouldn't do what I do for a living, right?
Mm.
I don't need to be treated like that repeatedly, money aside. So I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think when you hear these horror stories, like I said, I can pick apart where the train fell off the rails,
Mm-hmm.
and whose fault that is. That's a different story. Once a project is off the rails, it's a very challenging proposition to get it back on. So the goal is to keep it on the rails, and designers can do that. They can project manage these things just like they can any other decorating project that they are currently working on.
I love it. You know, at the end of the day, what I'm hearing is show up as a serious person ready to work, learn, collaborate as a respectful team member. Like that's like it distills it down, don't you think? It's like, you know, in order to be taken seriously, you have to show up seriously, and you have to be willing to learn the whole time you're there. You have to be, you know, willing to collaborate, and you have to be respectful because there's going to be tough situations where you do have to say, we can't put the window there. It's going to ruin where the bed goes, or we can't put the window there because I need a TV or whatever it is. But there is a way to do that, right? That you can have that conversation with an architect that you say, look, like you said, architects, and I remember John said the same thing, we're concerned with the outside. So it's like, instead of like just no, standing on your head, it's like, I get it. We need the outside of the house to look good too. So what are our options for the outside of the house if this was absolutely off the table? Maybe I can live with one of those options. That's like a whole different approach, right?
Absolutely. And like you said, if you show up ready to work, being a participant, an equal on a project, then those conversations are easier to have because that trust value is established. They don't think, oh God, this person's throwing me under the bus. They're going to embarrass me in front of the client. They're going to try and make bonus points off of me. You know, those are all I didn't just make that up. Those are things I've heard contractors say about my fellow colleagues. And they'll say this to me after we've been working together, and they say, wow, Renee, this is great. You know, I feel heard. I feel supported. You know, these are things that sort of break my heart because, wow, they should have felt heard and supported all along.
Right.
So I think it comes from a level of insecurity that a designer doesn't feel like they know enough. Now, let me be clear on one thing that designers need to fully understand, and I think hopefully gain some perspective from. A designer is in a unique situation, right? So a plumber is hired to do plumbing. An electrician is hired to do the electrical work. The flooring guy, the floors. The architect, the structure. An interior designer managing all of this has to know a little bit about it all. So that's a lot. I mean, think about that, right? That's crazy. But here's the best part. There's no way you could know and be skilled at all of those subsets. So then own that. I know some about plumbing. I know some about electrical. I know some about architecture. But I also will tell the electrician, I've never seen this before. Can you explain it to me? Especially with all this crazy, you know, all this low voltage wiring throughout a house. I'm like, all right, I'm out. I'll even tell a client, I'm like, look, you hired me for everything but the media, right? Like, let's be clear on this.
Right.
But, you know, that's the thing. I'm okay saying I don't know it all. Yeah. And because if I said I know it all, how is that possible, Luann? Right? I mean, think about that.
It is
like,
actually patently impossible.
It's impossible. And that's okay. And that's what I want to give designers the confidence to say, I don't know it all. How could I possibly know it all? But I'd like to know more. And who doesn't want to explain what they're doing, right? And show off their own skill sets and say, you know, I used to do it this way and, you know, the industry's evolved and now I'm doing it that way. Okay, well, then you've just learned something for your toolbox to impress, and I mean that the right way, to impress the next electrician. Right? So you're slowly building your skills with every project that you're on. And I think that is invaluable.
I love it. It's such a great approach. It's no different that we actually always have an open mind about learning about new products. Like we go to High Point and Vegas Market and different places to say what's new in design and what's new in lighting and what's new in furniture and what's new in all of the things. And that's learning. We don't ever look at our clients and say, I absolutely know every single piece of lighting, finish, furniture, and fixture that I could supply to you right now. You say, I'm going to get an understanding of what you need and what you want and what I believe is aesthetically the right things and functionally, and then I'm going to research it and come back to you and present it. And it's the same thing with your trades. You're so right. You don't have to sit there and pretend you know it all. It's perfectly fine to keep gathering and learning with every project. You're 29 years, I'm 40 years. There's no shame in that. It's the bad part, the thing that stops a project, the things that erodes the relationship with the trades is when you show up and you say and you act as if you know it all. Because, by the way, we all know that you don't. And especially you don't know everything about our particular expertise. I absolutely do love that when designers want to educate me on window treatments. It's like, okay. And the thing is, you want to give me an idea. You want to collaborate with me. Just what you're saying. I will learn something from you. But please, if I've just told you something based on my experience that I know to be true, do not tell me that that's not true. It's like, okay, that's the kind of conversation we're going to have. This is awesome, right? And it just stops the respect train, right? It just does. Meanwhile,
Absolutely.
Every day of the week, as I would measure projects with designers, the things they would come up with, Charles Pavarini pushed me out of my box, which I then pushed Billy, my partner and installer, out of his box to places that you cannot imagine. I mean, the things that this man would come up with, and for gratefully, we have such a great relationship, and it was born from, I remember the first couple of times he's like, oh, this is what I want to do. And I could have been very intimidated. I could have been because, he's however many years older than me, but it's not even that. It's we met when I was young. I was only probably 31. And so even if he was 40, only a few years older, when you're 30, everybody that's not 30 feels like they're 100, right? Like, that feeling, right? Yes. And then add to it his status. Charles Pavarini is one of the highest luxury designers in the New York City market. I mean, the things that this man creates from his brain are beyond comprehension. And I just remember from the beginning, and I remember thinking, and I was referred to him from another designer who also was at the top of his game in luxury. And I remember, I'll never forget the very first time he pushed me out of my box and said, Luann, what I'd like you to do is create this thing here and blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't have the slightest idea how that would technically work. Like, that's insanity. And I thought, if I tell him I don't know how this is going to work, is he going to think, what kind of window treatment company are you? Can I rely on you? And I said, but if I leave here and I tell him I got this and I don't have this is bad. And I remember saying to him, yeah, it's really a beautiful idea. Do you have any idea how it technically executed? And he just looked at me. He literally looked up at me and it was so funny because the first look was, what did you just say? And I just stared at him and then he just cracked up. He goes, that's why I brought you here. We started. I said, well, I think we're going to have to brainstorm on it a little because I'm not seeing the path to it. and it was amazing.
You had the confidence to say that.
Yeah. Well, I knew I couldn't leave and pretend. You can't leave and pretend because that gets you nowhere. Well,
the worst thing a designer can do in any job site meeting is smile and nod. I mean, there's just that is kiss of death. If you don't understand something and you are not, or you are giving the okay, or even, but by the way, no answer is still an answer.
Right.
I mean, that can have catastrophic, issues down the road. And I hear a designer go, well, I didn't really understand what they were saying, and I was embarrassed to ask. Okay. Well.
Yeah, I'll tell you the only time. Because there is that little moment of, act as if, like, I've got this, right? Like, there's a nuance here. And this is the thing. You have to know yourself. In that moment, I knew I had no idea. And because I had no idea, and I really didn't logically see it, I did not think, how would I get Billy to figure it out? So, but there have been times, back in the beginning of motorization, where I'm standing there and the electrician's talking and the designer's talking and the homeowner's talking, and I'm thinking, this is all over my head. But I'm writing everything down. I'm making sure I understand what the clear objectives are, what they want to have happen. And then I would just say, thank you for all this information. I need to review this with my lead installer. And as long as he, can see his way through all of the objectives that each of you wants, we will be back with a proposal. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference. If I know I can get the information, but I don't have it now, then I'm okay. But that was like, this man created crazy stuff. Beautiful, crazy stuff.
Well, and the other solution that I always give these designers who will say that to me is, that's fine. Smile and nod in that moment. And the minute that meeting breaks, you go up to whoever it was that was talking and say, yes, I need 10 minutes of your time. If it's not 100%. Now, call me later. I do not understand what you're talking about, and I want to make sure, or maybe you don't say that. You say, I want further information about what you're talking about. And then you sign off on it.
Right.
Smiling and nodding and pretending it's all going to go away is a disaster on a renovation project. It's not a sofa coming in the wrong color. It can really have a disastrous situation on your hands.
Yeah. No, I love it. Such great advice. And I just want to wrap up by saying another shout out to your podcast. That on the podcast you talk a lot about the different scenarios and the different things, and really great resource for interior designers wanting to up their game in all of these types of conversations and all the confidence in managing these things. And you also have resources for designers on your website, which we will put a link in the show notes. You have renovation management for interior designers course. You have a construction management workbook. You have a newsletter that you have. So there is lots of other ways beyond this interview on this podcast and your own podcast that you are supporting your interior design colleagues and really being that person that is trying to uplift all of you, and really all of you getting, the education, the resources, and the things that you need. So I don't know if there's anything that you want to say about the different resources that you have before you go. I'm happy to have you give us a little, explanation on it so people understand what really is available.
Sure. Yes. And this all sort of came out of COVID, and I had clients who I legally could not enter their states and do work. And so we were trying to do things over the phone with FaceTime, and admittedly we got more done than we thought we could. But a client just so frustrated one afternoon on the phone, and she said, I just wish you would come up with a manual on how to do this. And I kind of laughed it off, and I said, okay, I'll talk to you tomorrow. And I thought, I actually could do that. While no two projects are alike, the processes of running a project are alike. And so when I started talking, it was to homeowners. It was to people trying to take on their own projects. And all of a sudden, designers kept showing up. And I'm thinking, what are you doing here? Like, at first I thought, they're just checking out what I'm doing. And no, Luann, they were pouring in questions. Hey, I've been on sites. I don't understand what I'm doing. I'm intimidated. Or I really love this, but I don't know how to build it. And I thought, oh, why don't you know this? Because it's something I've always done. I fully admit I was in my bubble. I thought, I just thought most designers did this. And so that's where the course was born. It really does break it down. This woman in the course, she's like, oh my gosh, these are actionable steps that I can actually apply this to a project I'm on right now. Yes. I don't like fluffy things. I don't need, someone to necessarily boost my spirits. But this does it in actionable steps. I literally show you how my binder is put together. I mean, it's a little messy, but it gets me through the day, right? And I explain all the things that I've experienced over the last almost 30 years and really show that it's manageable. It's just you don't know the parts you're managing until they're explained. Once they're explained, it really is a similar process in every project. That the components that change are the clients or the contractors. Well, that's the same with any other decorating
Mm-hmm.
project, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sofas are sofas, whether I'm putting them in your house or my friend Anne's house. But
Mm-hmm.
Anne and Luann are going to have very different personalities. I'm going to approach those projects very differently. But at the end of the day, I'm putting sofas in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where designers, I think, are really missing out on a very stable, lucrative income to offset this erosion of the decorating services that we've all loved to provide to our clients. And they don't go away. I mean, right now, I would say on any given year, I'm about 60% renovation and 40% decorating.
Mm.
Now, that's by design, by me, because I'm one of those crazies. I love the insanity that construction brings, but they always lead to decorating. I mean, if you're going to put on a renovation, and chances are you're going to need furniture for it, right?
Right. Right.
So I have designers who say, well, I don't want to get into renovation because I'd miss decorating. You can do both. I do
Mm-hmm.
it all day long, all year long. I've always done it that way. And I have friends who, went to graduate school with me and they flip their numbers, right? They prefer decorating and they take
Mm.
on one or two small projects. So it's really amazing because you can control it on how you market yourself, who you market yourself to, how many projects you'll take on at a time, and I want to give designers that confidence that this is actually something they can do and they can succeed at it. And so if they are concerned about, there's only so many hours of the day that they can physically work and physically bill for, and their profit margins are, getting smaller every year, which we're all experiencing with the age of access, then this is something that they can easily just slot into their existing design firms and start promoting it and start marketing it. Start small, right? Like I
Yes.
said, reach out to those realtors. Start with the floors, the walls, and the powder bath.
Mm.
Photograph the hell out of it. There's your next project, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it just really does build upon itself, um, just putting in the effort. That's
Mm-hmm.
really all it is. The designers have the skills to do this. They just need the confidence to know that they can do it successfully.
I love it. I love it. Such great information, advice, encouragement, tips, all the things, Renee, really. And we'll put the links to your podcast and your website and everything in the show notes so that designers can, really access you for more support and more information. It's terrific. I love your website. I love the way you put it right up there up front, interiors and project management. It's like, there it is. You know what I mean? There's no guessing. This is a professional that you can hire for the whole thing. And like you said, if you do that, everybody needs to eventually get the sofa to go in the darn room that they just built, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
And to
very
be
good.
honest, there's other areas that you can, start making income off of tile selections and plumbing. It really does evolve,
Mm-hmm.
100% evolve into new paths of stable income. And that
Right.
obviously we need in order to stay in business.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, I just want to tell people, if they email me, it goes to me. It's the funniest thing. I will respond to an email, and more often than not, I get, oh my God, you're real. Yes. I have one email address. Well, I should say I have one professional email address. That's it. It goes to
That's
me,
it.
jumps in
That's
my inbox. There's no assistant that answers to me. There's just, I want people to be able to ask me for advice. And I'm happy. I may not necessarily get back to them within the hour, but I always back to everyone. And this is not just people that are taking the course or have a download of mine. It's people will just find me and they'll say, hey, listen, I'm in this situation. What do you think?
mm.
And that's from the podcast, or that's from someone I met along the way, or someone just emailed me this morning that they heard about me through another designer in a Facebook group they're in. And she was
Mm.
questioning how she should price herself. Like, I'm okay with that, right? I call me a sucker for design. It is literally all I've done. It is something that is so meaningful to me, and I want all designers to to be elevated to the level of professionalism that we all deserve, and quite frankly don't always receive from the public at large, and let alone some of the trades. So if I can help that one designer in, I think this woman's in Ontario, if I can help her price structure it better and she's more confident in it, then you know what, that's going to have the ripple effect that I want. And I want, to walk onto another project and have them say, hey, you know what, I've worked with a designer just like you. Let's get started.
Right.
That's the goal.
Rise all, the rising tide, rise all the ships, or whatever that saying is.
Absolutely.
So, yep, I love it. Well, thank you, Renee, so much for being here today. I totally appreciate all your insights and your advice, and it was great getting to know you. Thank you.
Thank you, Luann, for having me. I love what you do. I love that you support designers.
Thank you. Okay, so Renee is not talking about being a general contractor here, right? She's talking about renovation management as project management, which is really what you're doing, right? You might be managing the renovation of a kitchen, a bathroom, a full house, okay? But maybe your clients aren't looking at it in that way. They're thinking of you as the one who does the furniture and the pretty, and not recognizing that you're holding all those balls in the air already. So she encourages you to jump that hurdle, that when you have clients who do respect and trust and value you, that you make sure that they don't just consider you for the furniture aspect of it, right? So how do you position yourself as the one-stop shop for both renovation and decoration? Well, Renee advises to naturally add it to the conversation when you're on a project with a client, and you just say, oh, last time this happened, or another project that reminds me of this, reminds me of that. What you want to do is you want to enable the client to envision you handling all the things, because it's up to us to educate our current and potential clients of all the ways that we can service them. You need to give your clients a little insight into everything that goes on into managing a project like this, because we don't want them thinking, oh, they can wing it, right? So we want to really pile on all the things that have to be handled, all the things that have to be coordinated, which then might lead them and should lead them to considering you for that role, right? Now, another thing that she talked about is when, we've all been there when we're walking through someone's home and, she was describing, oh, don't look at that, don't do this. And I love her idea that she just takes a few moments. It's like marketing. She just takes a few moments to step in, offer some advice, and then say, yeah, that's something I can handle too. And hey, let's move on to what we came to talk about, right? Lots of terrific info in here. And I'm sure if you tune into Renee's podcast, The Only Girl on the Job Site, you're going to learn more. Renee admits even with 20 years experience, she still learns every day, right? I mean, that's right up our alley, right? The takeaway is that you need to show up ready to work, ready to learn, and ready to collaborate as a respected member of the team. All right. Basically, it's about constantly learning and constantly seeing yourself as equal to everyone else on the job site. In addition to the Only Girl on the Job Site podcast, she mentioned some resources for you. So you've got, the downloads that she mentioned, renovation management for interior designers course, the construction management workbook, her newsletter. All right. We'll put the links to all of these in the show notes. All right. Now, thank you tons, Renee, for this perspective. I liked it. It's just a little twist on something, and sometimes it is just about the way we think about ourselves in order to present ourselves with a different, what we call our Nancy G ladder of services, right? Now, before I go, I want to let you know, particularly if you're one of my window treatment professionals out there, that we are having a free Zoom open house event for Exciting Windows on August 18th, 2022. This Zoom is a pen and paper event where you'll learn about the trends and forecasting for the home decor industry from an economic standpoint. Okay, so expert Mark Richardson is going to come and talk to us and see what he's seeing in the near future economically for the home decor industry. We're also going to talk about best practices for leveraging video in your marketing. We've got William Hamilton from Hamilton Creatives joining us, and yours truly is going to talk about attracting and working with the designer trade market. So if you're interested in this free Zoom event, go to excitingwindows.biz /EW Zoom to register. And I would say, even if you're a designer and not a window treatment professional, information is information. All business advice always has the potential to create an aha moment that we can take back to our business. And honestly, the forecasting conversation is across both industries, it encompasses our entire home decor industry. So I would love to see you there. As I said, it's a free event. It's an hour and a half starting at 12 noon Eastern time, and you can go and register at the Eventbrite link that I mentioned. Okay, so links will all be in the show notes. All right. Thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. It is just my joy and pleasure to do this with and for you every single week. So decide to be excellent. Thank you for joining me today. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. If you'd like to know more about me, my books, or Luann University, go to luannnigara.com. And if you want to learn more about exciting windows where you can get education and resources to build a better window treatment business, go to excitingwindows.biz. Have an excellent day.